Reading is not easy. Anybody who says reading is easy is lying to themselves or to you. It is not easy. It is always easier to watch TV. Always. It is always easier to go and do drugs. It's always easy, almost always easier to go to a party unless you have anxiety problems. It's always easier to do stuff that provide immediate value, immediate dopamine release, okay? Or some kind of, or serotonin. Also, we found out that serotonin is a rewarding hormone as well. Or something that doesn't require much energy, like watching TV, being a vegetable. And what happens when you watch TV a lot? You become good at watching TV, which is not something you want to become good at. Hello friends, welcome to week 11's Q&As, joined by my lovely and helpful wife, Lucy.
Hi guys.
Lucy will be asking me some more of your questions this week, and we'll start with the first one.
Alright, the first one is by Brett Malcolm, and he says, "Hi Leo, I would like more general reading tips, how to read faster and retain more information."
Thank you, Lucy. That's a great question, and I may have a lot of ideas on that.
I know you do.
So basically, Brett, I do have a lot of ideas on that. I worked very hard, and I discuss this with Lucy actually quite often, because I worked very hard myself on learning how to read more. And I believe that this was the greatest character development and investment into myself that I did in my lifetime. Specifically, what I did was, although I used to read books when I was younger, like a normal person at an average pace, when I was in university at Carnegie Mellon, I discovered that I was outmatched by the caliber of students that I was around at the time. Now, while I've recently noticed that Carnegie Mellon has shot down on the rankings, in the overall rankings, from 20-something when I got in to 30 now overall in the US, it remains one of the best business schools in the US. It's ranked 4th for undergrad. And I was in the business school, and the students that were around me were extremely competitive people. I was also taking a lot of math courses, an inordinate amount of math courses, to be honest. And the school was extremely good also at linear discrete mathematics. So I was competing with because of the computer science element. It's one of the best computer science. So I was competing with some people that were truly exceptionally intelligent, more intelligent than me. And they had better family backgrounds than me. They had parents who sent them to what are called anchor schools. Anchor schools in the US, every 3 states or so have a school. I mentioned this to you briefly before. Have a school that deals with the intellectually gifted or the academically gifted people. So a lot of the students, especially the white students that were at Carnegie Mellon, there were a few white students. Most people were Asian, but most of the white students were coming from anchor schools. They had great upbringings that helped them to excel at anything they did. I did not have all of this. So I developed my own method to equip myself intellectually with the challenges that were at the school, as I've described to Lucy before. So what I'll tell you now is some of the tips I learned from that process about how to read better. Now, I know your question is about how to read faster and retain more information. Let me quickly answer you by saying that the way you retain more information is by engaging more with what you read, and the way you read faster is by a process called chunking in your brain, in which your brain becomes easier for your brain to do several processes together because the neural networks connecting the parts of the brain that are used to make those processes are made more efficient. But let me get into detail. So first of all, to deal with engaging, when you engage with a book, what that means really is that you tattoo your book. You use the margins to annotate heavily. You write in detail your reactions as you read the book, not just things that you think are going to be useful. If you have the time for it, I would highly recommend that you even annotate your personal reactions, such as, for example, if you find something funny, write haha. I used to write haha throughout when I was 19 years old. I used to write anything. I would write that I was surprised, for example, by someone's actions in their own life, in a biography or so on. The more you engage, the better. So you write on the margins, and then what I noticed myself was ideal was I would procure pens that had one side that was a highlighter and one side that was a pen, and I would keep these with me, usually 3 at a time, in my shoulder pack. And anywhere I was that I was reading, I would have the pen out, and I would either highlight or underline, depending on the meaning. I would have meanings for that, and I would have small notations for sometimes, like if I want to check back on something, I would have a CB, that means check back, or so I have that. Then I have the reactions on the side. The more you engage with something as you read, the more you remember. This we know from cognitive psychology, and it's the same. For example, if you read something, and then, for example, say you're reading a math book. If you read something about how to do something in math, then you stop and you actually work out the problem and do it a few times, you'll remember it much more than if you didn't. So it's about the levels of engagement. Now, as you can tell, this is diametrically opposing to speed. The more you engage, the less speed you spend. And that comes back to the speed subject, which I'd like to talk about briefly as well. So there are people, and these people aggravate me a lot, who claim that they can speed read. So, for example, actually, you know what? There's a YouTuber who does this too. Jason Blaha is a speed reader. He says he speed reads multiple books a day, and he's a fantastic guy. But other than Jason Blaha, there's a lot of people in the world. You will not find them at top universities. They will not be at the top 20 universities. You will not encounter those people in the academic institutions of repute and rigor. But you'll encounter these people online and in weird communities and stuff that claim that speed reading is a real thing. Now, these people are either people who have been fooled by charlatans, or charlatans themselves, or people who don't really understand knowledge and learning. Because I'll tell you something, I bought the speed reading books when I was an adolescent or 18, 19 years old. I tried it. I can speed read. I can go as fast as they can. I can look at the first sentence, look at the structure, skim the paragraph. I can start by looking at the skeleton of the book through the chapters. I can sort of, and right afterwards I could tell you a little bit about the book. But the retention of that knowledge is laughable. First of all. Second of all, it does not mean you understood. Just going through randomly, quickly, it doesn't mean anything. Really, it's nothing. It's completely useless unless you need to find out what's in some text. Like you're at work and you have to read a bunch of profiles of companies. You don't have the time to read them, but you're looking for something specific from them. You can skim it. And that's sort of speed reading. And that's what I did many, many times as well. I didn't do that from what I learned from the speed reading books. I did that because of the skill that I developed from reading at a normal pace with annotations and stuff like that for years and years. When you read for long enough, you get this thing called chunking, where your brain, think of chunking as this. I told Lucy before this. Think of chunking as this. When you were a kid, you were in, for example, algebra, or not even algebra. When you're younger than that, you had to do long division. When you do long division, the first couple of times you do it, you have to think of, I have to put the remainder there. I have to move this here. There's step 1, 2, 3. But when you've done it for about 6 months, you no longer consciously think of it. That change from conscious to unconscious is chunking in the brain. Your brain is combining processes. This happens also with reading. So if you read for hours and hours of time, specifically cognitive psychologists will tell you 10,000 hours, which is the time that's required to become an expert at something. They've noticed that people across a variety of fields, when they've done something for 10,000 hours, tend to have developed something particular about the speed and the flow with which they do it. This can happen with reading too. When you've done that enough time, over time you will read quicker, but you'll be able to, with agility, move through a book and understand what may be in a paragraph quickly and judge whether a book is good or not quickly. When I was younger, I ended up reading so many horrible books, specifically on finance. I read horrible books because I couldn't really tell if it was a good book or not until I got in the middle of it. Now I can tell very quickly. So these are all things that come with expertise, and this comes with time. So that's the issue with speed and retention. But let me tell you some other tips that I learned. Number 1, if you want to get yourself into reading, the key to doing that is not to start with the books that are the most valuable for you, but to start with the books that for some reason just naturally interest you. Not the outcome of the book interests you. Not, I want to become better at this, so this interests me. But this interests me. For some stupid reason, whatever, this thing interests me. You start with those books. When you read enough of those books, you will be better at reading in general. Now, this can also be used, by the way, to learn to read about a subject that you're not interested in. For example, I've mentioned to some of my clients that if you want to read about, for example, statistics and you're in university, you may want to go on Amazon and buy the book How to Lie with Statistics. It's a very interesting book. Statistics sounds boring, but statistics is not boring. But it takes a little bit of time to realize why it's so interesting. And How to Lie with Statistics is not the only book. There's a bunch of books. So what I would do sometimes if I would take a course that was uninteresting to me, I would read a couple of short books on the subject that seemed very interesting. That would activate my interest. Then I would find it easier to read the actual textbooks and other things like that. So you can do that there, and you can do that also generally to learn how to read. Another thing that you can do is, this is to become more efficient in general, is to carry a book with you and to carry your pen with the highlighter and the pen everywhere you go. So you always have a book with you. When I was in my most intense phases of reading, and even till now, I always carry a book with me, but I don't go out as often as I did when I was younger. But I would always carry a book with me, and in any 5 minutes or 10-minute intervals during the day, I would take the book out and read. I would not take my phone out and text or something like that. So for example, I used to take the bus when I was in Carnegie Mellon, everywhere. So every time I was standing at the bus stop, I was reading. Even if it was only 5 minutes. And even if I saw the bus approaching from a little while away, I would start, read a couple of sentences, then stop. So I would be doing this throughout the day. So my brain is adapting and engaging with good literature and with useful information throughout the day. Also, I would be, so that's one thing. You do it throughout the day all the time. Beware of your phone. Okay, that's one thing. The second thing to do is this. Manipulate your environment to allow reading to be more attractive to you. Reading is not easy. Anybody who says reading is easy is lying to themselves or to you. It is not easy. It is always easier to watch TV. Always. It is always easier to go and do drugs. It's always easy, almost always easier to go to a party unless you have anxiety problems. It's always easier to do stuff that provide immediate value, immediate dopamine release, okay? Or some kind of, or serotonin. Also, we found out that serotonin is a rewarding hormone as well. Or something that doesn't require much energy, like watching TV, being a vegetable. You know, and what happens when you watch TV a lot? You become good at watching TV, which is not something you want to become good at. So you want to do what you want to become good at doing. So you want to read. How do you do that? Well, what I did in university was this. I was very extreme though. And I still incorporate some of these things in my life, but I have had to moderate it a little bit because of becoming an adult and, you know, having to have people come to the house and stuff like that. But what I did was this. Number one, my entire apartment was white. I discovered that even just having colors in the apartment was slightly distracting. Now, when I'm older, I notice now it's not distracting to me, but I don't know if maybe this was overkill, I don't know. But my whole apartment was white, everything was white, I bought everything from IKEA, it was all white. Second of all, I would take my phone and my laptop, which was connected to the internet. My desktop was not connected to the internet, which was such a waste of money, you would think, but I used to use it for programming, for math stuff. Like I was using MATLAB a lot, the program. Some of you may know it. But the point is, my desktop was not connected to the internet, so it was safe. But anything that communicated with the outside world, I put in a closet. I didn't turn it off because you can't turn it off. I put it on silent and then put it in a closet. My laptop and my phone would be in the closet whenever I was reading or whenever I was studying. And by the way, I noticed this myself, but later you find sleep researchers pointing to the same thing, saying that even having your phone in the same room as you may raise your anxiety levels and your cortisol and somehow inhibit sleep a little bit. So I noticed this myself when I was 18 years old. I put it in a closet. Other things I did, for example, I put quotes on the walls throughout my house to inspire myself. To be able to push yourself to a level that's not natural, which is the level you need to achieve greatness. You don't achieve greatness by doing what, reading 20 pages or 30 pages or 40 pages. To achieve greatness, you do what, Joseph Stalin was reading 400 pages a night, allegedly, he claims. People claim around him, he claimed to people around him, 400 pages a night while he was ruling the largest country in the world, the USSR. That's the kind of thing that creates greatness, that develops intelligence where it wasn't really there, where it changes through plasticity, changes the function of your brain. You need to push it to that limit. To push it to that limit, you need to motivate yourself. You need to not have an ease of access to communication. Also, by the way, TV, like I didn't have a TV for most of my life. I have a TV now, but it's also, by the way, problematic. I don't like having a TV. I really don't think it's great. So you don't have a TV, you don't have communications, and then you motivate yourself through the house. You put up quotes, go on a quote database online, find some aphorisms from Nietzsche or people like that, Confucius, that motivate you, people that you respect, even if you don't know much about them yet. You will when you read a lot, right? And you put those quotes up around the house in places that you will read, and write it by hand. Don't just print it. So you invest in it, and you put it there, and you see that stuff. So when you get tired of reading, say, okay, you know what? I'm tired of this book. I'm going to put it down, but I'm not going to go call someone yet. I'm not going to go out yet. I'm going to pick up another book and read until I get tired. Even 10 or 15 more pages read past your limit, that's where the chunking begins. That's where the expertise begins. That's where you develop greatness. So these are my tips.
So to recapitulate, number 1, get a book that you like.
Mm.
Okay. Number 2, take notes when you're in the book. Number 3, control your environment and keep on reading. And number 4, put quotes and motivational things all over.
Yeah, that's a good synopsis. It's not. Yeah, sometimes I talk too long-windedly and it won't be so clear. But the point is, don't think of this as an easy task. If you're reading less than you want to be reading, there's a reason for that. It's not easy. Nobody reads 300 pages a day consistently without having a dedicated. He chose to do that, or she, and really work toward it. Mm-hmm. I read 200 pages a day for over 2 years straight. Consistently, not missing a day, not doing anything, and transformed my brain. But I did it through willpower and discipline and programming my environment, not engaging even with people that were not in the same mindset. Even just engaging with some friends that are not, I assume you're maybe younger, or maybe if you're not younger, but if you socialize with people, or even if you watch TV and you're watching people on TV, characters that are not dedicated, not ambitious, you will absorb some of that. Mm-hmm. We are who we hang out with. So just be careful of the whole thing. You have to have a clear program to how to do it.
Okay.
Thank you guys so much for listening. We'll see you next time.